Hey, welcome to the podcast. Glen Gower here. Great to have you. About 18 months ago, I gave this talk at STSU to some of the Christians on campus. The talk is From Perception to the Prophetic. Now, why? Why this particular talk on discernment? Because I think a lot of stuff is going on right in front of us, ladies and gentlemen, and we can't see it. And why is it that we can't see it? How come we can't see very well? So I want to dive in just a little bit about what I think is going on. This is really a spiritual battle that we're in. And the world's been in a spiritual battle since Adam and Eve. So I don't know why all of us or any of us are surprised. So let's begin. Let's dig into how do you discern what's going on right in front of you? And hopefully I can give you some ideas on what to do. But now let's begin to be able to see differently. Hey, welcome to the Glen Gower Podcast, the best podcast you'll listen to all day. Sponsored by Mission Blueprint. So, I grew up on a farm let's go back here. I grew up on a farm in eastern South Dakota. I was born in 1970. This is where I grew up. And I loved being on the farm. And if you grew up in the town, I suspect you loved being in the town. And so most of us grew up, went to a public school situation, or it is certainly a situation. It's a social experiment is what it is. Academia has been thrown out of the door. But I went to a public school, actually Catholic school my first 6 years, which I really liked. But I went to public school like everybody else. And I'd say I had a pretty good time growing up. We did lots of drinking, lots of partying, lots of sports. Another word for some of that is hedonism, but it wasn't all bad. I joined the Army back in 1987, fall of 87, actually on my birthday. Because I thought the sooner I can get in, the sooner I can get out. I signed an 8x2 contract, and these are the boys in 4th Platoon, B Battery, and I kind of remember some of their faces, but we were all 17 and 18 years old. I'm the guy on the left in the fatigues. I'm the only one out of uniform, and I scratch my head and I wonder how in the world did that happen? Oh well. So it was here in basic training that God began speaking to me. That's right. And how did he speak to me? Certainly not in an audible voice. I would love that. Wouldn't that be great? But these thoughts came into my head, thoughts that I couldn't chase away, and thoughts that I actually wanted to ponder. And so this is kind of where it all begins in basic and AIT training. In 1987, 1988. Actually, this is June of 1988. I was in the Guards 9 months before I went to basic training. We all look kind of old here, don't we? Anyway, let's move on. So in my basic training experience, so I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and I stayed for my AIT training. AIT is Advanced Individual Training. And in AIT, unlike basic, we were in this big room with 40 guys, 40 beds. AIT, it was in a room, I think there's like 6 beds or 5 beds. Mouse was one of my roommates. I can't think of his real name, but we called him Mouse. He was about 5'2". He never stopped talking, and he was quick. Kind of reminded us of Mighty Mouse. After about my 3rd week with Mouse, he came back from a weekend, and his mom had read a book, Is Elvis Alive? And so all weekend long, they were talking about all these really weird things about Elvis and his death, and in the casket looked like it looked like he was 18 years old. And you can actually see pictures of this. No, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not saying Elvis is alive. That's not the point. Just hang on for a second. So anyway, he began to go through all these proofs, if you will, that Elvis is alive. And what I did is typical of anybody. I laughed him off, and I said, "You're crazy. He's not alive." And he would say, "No, Gower, listen. Look at his tombstone." I said, "I'm not looking at his tombstone. He's dead." Why am I bringing this up? Well, I'm bringing this up because I wasn't being objective with him. I didn't sit down and love him rightly, and I should have listened to him. Now, do I know, literally, do I know if Elvis is alive or dead? Well, no. But it was in the news, and of course, almost everybody believed it. And I have no reason to believe he's alive. But my point was, from the very beginning, as a 17-year-old, even before that, I wasn't using any cognitive powers. In other words, reason. I wasn't reasoning. I should have let him present his case and listened to him and did more research if I was interested. But I just brushed him off and said, oh, Mouse, you're nuts. There's no way he's alive. And I find that to be the case with most people that I know. They just don't believe a thing, or they do believe a thing, and there's no investigation. And I think that's one of the reasons why we are in the situation we're in. In 2015, rather, fast forward, this is several years later, of course. In basic training, I was 17, and now in 2015, I was 45 years old. I was in my normal prayer time in my basement. And as I was pondering the scriptures that day, God spoke to me. And when God speaks to me, it's always in a thought, right? At least that's the way he works with me. And I think almost everybody, these thoughts come into our minds and we can't get them out. Never audible. And he said to me, Glenn, things are not what they seem. And it was pretty strong. In other words, I couldn't just dismiss this thought. So I began to investigate. What do you mean? How are things not as they seem? So the investigation began. Now, what's crucial here is I began to investigate. And how do you form an opinion, right? You form an opinion with facts. I didn't have an opinion about Elvis. I just said, no, you're a crazy mouse. He's dead. But I didn't do any investigation. At the turn of the 20th century, there was a Dr. Auctioner. I think he was from Louisiana. And Dr. Auctioner realized that patients will do whatever their doctor says. In other words, people will believe anything. And I think that's true. People do believe anything. We're very, very gullible. Let me give you an example. Orson Welles did a radio fake. And he said we're being bombarded by aliens. And it was called War of the Worlds. Now, you can find snippets of this on YouTube. I saw part of the interview, and they made it look so real. It was really fascinating. And this was in October of 1938. The problem? A lot of the country who was listening to Orson Welles actually believed we were being invaded. And they had to, I don't know whether it was on the national news or somebody had to make a statement that it was just fiction because so many people got caught up in this idea that aliens were actually attacking or coming into this country, into this world. People will believe anything. Here's another example. I went to this movie, Independence Day. I don't know how old this is, but I think it's pretty old. I'm not sure what year it came out. But there were reports that around the country that people had to calm some teenagers down because they actually literally believed that they were watching a video clip of a live episode that was happening. That's right. They couldn't realize, either they forgot or didn't, just somehow went into some kind of natural trance where they believed it was happening live in the movie theater. How did they forget they were in a movie theater watching a movie? But they did. So they had to be calmed down. Why? People will believe anything. So there's been an attack on our reason. I think it's pretty clear. And one of the reasons I love talking about this is because as I look at my own life, for the first, I would say 20 years, I didn't address my reasoning skills. I was too caught up doing other things. I didn't think reasoning skills were that important, but they are. So let me continue here with this woman on the screen. This is Mary, the Mother of God. So for you non-Catholics out there, in our Catholic tradition, Mary has appeared several times over the last 2,000 years. There's even reports, I'm not sure if it's true, but that she appeared in the first century. One of the big ones is Our Lady of Guadalupe in the 16th century. But this one here is Our Lady of Fatima in Portugal. So she appeared in 1917 to 3 little kids. Now, why am I talking about Mary? How are we going from we can't reason to what's going on here? Well, one of the reasons is because I think God is trying to wake us up out of a trance. Now, some would say out of the matrix. And if I have some time, I'll talk about that today, because I do believe the movie The Matrix is a metaphor. It's really true. We are in some type of matrix. And when Keanu Reeves said The Matrix was a documentary, and he said it in a serious way, he wasn't joking. Initially, I thought he was crazy, but now I think he's right on the mark. It is a documentary. But it's not like in the movie, if you've seen the movie, it's not the kind of matrix we're in. I don't think machines are actually building people and using them as energy. But I do believe we're in a type of matrix where we can't see. Blinders have been put over our eyes. And Our Lady of Fatima in 1917 came to wake us up. This is the beginning process of the wake-up call. And in 1917, one of the things she said is Russia will spread its errors. Okay. And did this happen? Did Russia begin to spread its errors? Well, this happened just a few months before we have what is called the Bolshevik Revolution. Now, you got Engels and Marx. They were key players in this whole thing. And everyone knows what Karl Marx wrote, right? The Manifesto. So these two were a team, right? And part of what we're struggling with is because of these two founding fathers. So the Bolshevik Revolution happened in Russia, and this is just a few months after Our Lady appeared. And the attack, much like the French Revolution, was on Christians, particularly Catholics. And they think around, again, Alexander here, Solzhenitsyn thinks 66 million Russians were killed by the Bolsheviks. And they began to spread their errors of communism all over the world. And the reason why they wanted to attack Germany is because Germany was in the middle of Europe. And if you can secure Germany, then you've got basically, you've muddied the waters of all of Europe. But this literally happened, right? 66 million Russians were killed. And I don't know why we're not talking about this more. Granted, Hitler was another evil guy. He's pegged as the most evil guy of the 20th century. But what happened in Russia? Granted, 6 billion Jews and then another 3 million Catholics and Christians were killed. Juxtapose that to 66 million. Very strange. We're not talking more about what happened over there in Russia. So Russia is spreading their errors all over the place, right? So communism, which is Russia's bread and butter, was set out to do 4 things: destroy the family, destroy the right to property, destroy religion, and destroy the nation. Full control. And this is really what Cain set out to do, right? This is nothing new. You know, you think about right to property. Why did Cain start cities? Now, remember Cain and Abel in the Old Testament. Why did he build cities? So he can enslave people, right? This is just another kind of slavery. Destroy the family, destroy the right to property, religion, and nation. Don't you see this happening right in front of us? I sure do. Particularly lately, the family is being destroyed by this transgender movement. Okay, so this gentleman, Yuri Bezmenov, I saw a YouTube video of him, and he said there's 4 ideas of ideological subversion. So how do you kill And I would say it this way, Christianity, or either the church, the Catholic Church. Because if you can dethrone the Catholic Church, which is Christ's saving vehicle for the world, then anything can go, right? So think order to disorder. And in these 4 stages of ideological subversion, it's all about disorder, okay? So there's basically 4 stages, and I want to go through them one at a time. Demoralization is the first one. So how do you demoralize, right? Look at these pictures here. What are we pushing for? Divorce, insurance for housewives, knock out poverty. You had the sexual revolution in the 60s, right? I like this sign. I hate it, but it's very interesting. End human sacrifice. Don't get married. Washing diapers is not fulfilling. But children are, right? They miss that. Gay pride. So we are subverting the family. Because if you can subvert the family, a Christian family, then you change the world. So the first attack is to demoralize, particularly the family. Will Smith says, I quote, "If anybody can find someone to love them and to help them through this difficult thing that we call life, I support that in any shape or form." So does that mean pets? What does that mean? Anybody. If anybody can find someone to love them. So homosexuality, of course that's what he's talking about. Anybody. I support that. Now, the thing about Will Smith and these stars is, I don't know about you, but I'm sick of their opinions. Why can't they just act? Like, I have a job. Why can't they just act and just keep their mouths shut? But they can't, because they all have an agenda. You see, they're all on the same team. And this is something that I didn't see right away, but they all are serving the same master. And it's not the master that I serve. Are you saying, Glenn, that they're satanic in nature? Well, they're connected to the satanic church in one way or another. Yeah, I am saying that. So the next one is to destabilize. So you demoralize, you destabilize. And have we not seen war in the 20th century? Constant bombing on this earth? War after war after war. Do you think that's some kind of coincidence? No. No, that's an agenda. They're trying to destabilize us. And the easiest way to do that is through war, right? Another one is the economy. Make our economy difficult. And have we seen that, right? So you got Bill Clinton here who says it's the economy, stupid. Well, Bill Clinton's going to make the dollar seem good. And you have all these economic soft landings. But over time, our dollar is going to lose value. When I was a kid, a Snickers bar was 25 cents. Now that darn thing's $1.89. Are things getting more expensive, or are we losing value of the dollar? It's the second one. The dollar's losing value. The third one is create a crisis. Okay? Here's a great example of that. This was a terrible day for our country when John F. Kennedy Sr. was killed. You create this crisis. And we all get we're all put some kind of, what is it called? PSD. Is that right? PSD? I don't know. But we're all in this weird, frantic state because the president has been shot. And John F. Kennedy was beloved, right? He was beloved by most Americans. And here's another one. Here's another crisis. The Twin Towers. Whether this was a government job or not, I'm not saying one way or the other. I am suspicious of this, to be very honest with you. But I don't know. But these are crises, right? You put everyone in a panic mode. There's another one. Boy, if you want to really get to Americans, hit them in their pocketbook. So the housing collapse happened in 2008. I was terribly affected by this. I couldn't sell my house for over a year. I was paying 2 mortgages and trying to raise funds to do missionary life. Crazy. And then finally, you bring normalization. And this is where change happens. See, this is how sly these guys are, right? Glenn, what guys? Part of what I'm talking about today, ladies and gentlemen, is that none of this is coincidence. There's elite people pulling strings. And you probably won't believe me, but when you begin to dive deeper, look at the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, right? The Rothschilds. When you begin to look at these certain families having in some kind of control over all these years, the puzzles will fit. So normalization, right? So everyone has to go through screening in the airport, right? So it's just normalized. And maybe one of the presidents gives us a bunch of money. And we all get, what did I get when Bush was president in 2002? Like $400, $300. Got my money back. So it just becomes normalized and we forget. Again, this is where big changes are made, which makes life even more difficult. I mean, do you really have to check everybody's shoes? I mean, thousands of shoes before you get on a plane? Because of one guy trying to light a shoe and he wasn't effective. Anyway, so these are the 4 stages and they're circular. Once you go through the 4 stages, you just start right over again. JFK was the first crisis, 9/11 was the second crisis, and on and on and on. So I had this dream. This was in 1990. And I didn't know what it was. So here's the dream. Inside of my dream, I was back on the farm. That early picture that I showed you. And I went to bed at night. And I woke up at midnight. And I slept upstairs. And I was on the west side of the house. So my window faced west. And I heard all kinds of screaming and hooting and hollering. And in this dream, I woke up. And I saw a bunch of people in my yard, and they were looking into the sky. And they were seeing some kind of these images. It wasn't the northern lights, because that would have been in the north part of the sky. But they were looking to the west. And it was all these beautiful colors. And I was like, wow. And all of us were gazed on these beautiful colors in the sky. And I was, with everybody else, staring to the west. And all of a sudden, I heard Jesus say, Glen. And I looked to my right, to the east, and there he was. And all of a sudden, I woke up. So throughout the years since 1990, I would ask, Lord, what is that dream all about? And we get an answer. So years would go by, and I'd think about that dream. What was that dream all about? And I wouldn't get answers. So finally, within the last 10 years, I don't actually remember what year this was, I was praying again. And I said, Lord, what was that dream? What was everybody looking at up in the western sky, all these colors? And he said, the cloud. And I went, the cloud? Oh, the cloud. Oh, the cloud. Well, I would not have known what the cloud was in 1990. Right? I wouldn't have known. But everybody's in the cloud. Now, all you got to do is look at your phone and you're in the cloud. You're staring into the cloud. Well, another way to think about the cloud is the media. Now, if you do a word search on media, the word media, you're going to find out that media is a Greek god. Literally, it's a Greek god that was worshipped by the early Greeks. But if we take a look at the way we know media, 6 media giants control a staggering 90% of what we read, watch, or listen to. Now, isn't that interesting? These giants, you look at Comcast, NBC, Universal Pictures, Focus Features, News Corp, Fox, Wall Street Journal, New York Post, Disney, ABC, ESPN, Pixar, Viacom, MTV, Nickelodeon, Paramount Pictures, Time Warner, CNN, HBO, Time, CBS, Showtime, and the Smithsonian Channel. These 6 companies own 90% of what we read, watch, or listen to. And I wonder, are they all working together? Could they create a narrative to get the same basic message to us if they needed to? So I want to implore you today to implore some discernment. So what is discernment? It's distinguishing between what is right and what is false. And the first tool that you would use for that is reason. Reason is key here. If you can't reason for yourself, think through things, you'll be caught up in the matrix your whole life. Reasoning should start with young children. And I start as early as I can. I'll ask why. And they won't know how to answer that way. But I'll say, what's the reason you want an ice cream cone? Or what's the reason you want to watch? I get them thinking about things. Even when they're fighting, after they get done fighting, I'll ask the question, what should you have done? We have to invoke our thinking skills, how to reason. And the other thing is, the second tool would be discernment of spirits. And this is a bit more spiritual. This goes to the heart of our soul. It's actually a spiritual gift that you find in the Bible, discernment of spirits. The good spirit is the Holy Spirit. The bad spirit is demonic or demons. And if you don't believe they're real, well, look into it. They're very real. So reason and discernment of spirits are 2 faculties that everyone needs to get better at. You see, what's really going on in front of us? Could we be fooled and not know it? We perceive things to be true, but we need to move from perceiving things to what really is true, to the prophetic. And right now, ladies and gentlemen, we're living in a spiritual war. And the war is really loud. And it's right in front of us. But can you see it? You see, I don't think you can. Many of you can. But I think a lot of people in the last few years have woken up to what's been going on, who has been deceiving us. You know, we don't know the presidents of the United States. We don't know these world leaders. We don't know the governors. I don't know Kristi Noem, right? I'm in South Dakota. She's my governor. I don't know her. Do I think she's a good woman? She seems to be, but I don't know these people. But you do know what they do and watch their policies, right? Something is going on. We've believed a narrative all these years that seem not to be true. My question to you is, are you in the matrix? And if you are, how would you know it? You see, you wouldn't know it if you're in the matrix. That's the whole point. You can't tell me that you're awake because you might not. You might be sleeping. Nobody who goes to bed at night and begins sleeping at 11 o'clock, no one says at 2 and 4 and 5, hey, I'm sleeping right now. See, you don't know you are. This is why we need to invoke our reason and our discernment skills, because something is happening right in front of us, a huge spiritual battle. And my hope for you is to be able to see clearly and ask God to give you the gift of vision or discernment. Okay, that's it for now. Remember, you are loved, and may God strengthen the bars of your gate. Hey, thanks for listening to the Glen podcast, sponsored by Mission Blueprint. Mission Blueprint is a nonprofit ministry started by Glen and Jamie to sanctify the family. Our income is donation-based, and we need your help. Please support us financially by going to www.mission-blueprint.org and be a part of our financial team. Thank you, and may God strengthen the bars of your gate.